There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone who's come here to join today. I am, as always, excited to share the information today about Aquarius. And before I get started, I just want to make a couple of announcements. And the first announcement is just I want to invite any of you who are um, interested in the retreat that I have in September, which is the Shasta Sacred Journey. And there's probably a handful of people who have been on that in the past, this past year and the year before. And so I have 6 spots left open. I'm doing 2 trips this year in September. The first date for Shasta is the 12th through the 16th, and I have 1 spot in that date. I had someone move from that date to the 19th to the 23rd. So one is opened up if anybody's interested or if you know someone who might be interested. And then the other dates are the 19th through the 23rd. And if you want more information, you can visit my website and you can also contact me and I can give you more information. And then the second announcement is that for those of you attending this masterclass, I'm offering a deeper dive. It's a 50-minute session. It's only $77. You can take advantage of that monthly if you like, as long as this as long as this is going on, which will be for the next almost 9 months, because I'm going to go through each of the astrological signs. So you're welcome to that. And I send the link out in the recording. And as I said earlier, for those of you who didn't catch it, I send out all the recordings that up to date every time I send out the recording, and there'll be just an audio. If you want to get the full picture of it, you can go on my YouTube channel and find it there, and I'll send that out in the Monday recording session that I send out. I'll send out all that information. So that's just some announcements there, and looking forward to diving in here. So let's do it. And so as I go through this masterclass, I just want to invite you to, take notes, of course, if that's what, if there's things that come up that you want to make note of, or a question that you want to ask me when I open it up for questions. I did put some questions in the chat, and those are just some prompt questions to get you thinking about the information that I'm going to be sharing here today. And you can, either answer those questions or ask anything that you like, or share something that is an experience or an insight that you have that's going to, be something that will contribute to what we're talking about today and move the energy of consciousness forward for all of us. So, we all have wisdom within us, and we all have wisdom to share. So definitely open to that, because that's what helps us to connect more dots and for us to be able to become more aware of things maybe that we weren't aware. So I always appreciate everybody's medicine that they have to contribute, because that's how I too learn. I learn from all of you, because we're both the student and the teacher simultaneously. So where I want to begin today is I just want to talk about for a moment walking the spiritual path, and give a little bit about what that entails. And so when we walk the spiritual path, there are times when we can often feel like it is a long and arduous journey. And it requires that we recognize on the spiritual path, that we recognize the awareness of the soul that resides within us. And in that recognition, that we are committed in expressing it in our everyday life. So whether we walk the spiritual, whether one of us, any of us walk the spiritual path in this lifetime or another, at some point we do, this process, and the goal is eventually to come to the summit of human evolution, which is the perfected consciousness, which is enlightenment. And when I use the word perfected, I don't mean it in the ego sense of the word of perfection. I mean it in perfected consciousness, as that we're raising our vibration to a higher vibration. And this is something that maybe in this lifetime, none of us ever completely reach. And this is something that is that we can speak to when we talk to about like the masters that have come before us. When we talk about Mother Mary, we talk about Jesus, we talk about um, Mary Magdalene, we're talking about these masters that have come before us who have reached this level of enlightenment and consciousness, and then have continued on their journey in another way. And so I think it's really important for us to give ourselves grace that, we are here and we are evolving through each of our incarnations, and that it's not about getting it right completely, because we get caught up in the ego saying we got to get it right. I got to stop doing that. I got to do this. And it's a process. It's a process. And so I just think it's important for us to bring in forgiveness at times and to give ourselves grace. So the purpose of this masterclass is to help for me to help you, and for myself to bring an understanding of what the path is for us, and to understand that these signs of the zodiac are not this, they're archetypes, and we all at the core of our being, we're all the same. But what this tool of astrology gives us is a window to see ourselves through. And that's what I feel is really powerful. And I think it's really powerful not to put ourselves in a box. And that's what Aquarius is all about. Aquarius is about, like, you're not the box, get out of the box. Okay. And so the tendency is to say, well, I'm an Aquarius and therefore I'm this, or I'm a Capricorn and therefore I'm this. And the truth of it is that they may be bigger tendencies in our experience of life, but every single one of us carry the energy of these archetypes in our life. And for those of you who have been on the last two classes, and I've described Sagittarius and Capricorn, I know that every single one of you can relate to those in some way. And you will relate to this next one here that we're going to be talking about today, which is Aquarius. So I first want to start with the dark night of the soul, and I want to talk about this because this relates so much to an Aquarius, the journey of Aquarius. So as we travel the spiritual path, we all know by no means it's not consistent and steady. There's lots of ups and downs on the spiritual path. And the dark night experience, and some of you may have experienced this in your life, brings out a sense of sometimes feeling lost, or there's an emptiness, or there's a struggle, or we're facing some sort of a life challenge. And sometimes that challenge can be one of where it's life-threatening for us. And so this is considered the dark night experience. And this experience, here's the thing about this dark night experience, is that it is painful. It is painful to the lower nature of ourself. It is painful to the personality of the self, but is not painful to the soul. There's a big difference here. Because to the soul, this is something that must naturally occur. And what that means is that the dark night occurs because there is an imperfection in the personality's relationship to the soul. Now, again, when I use imperfection, I'm not using it from an egocentric definition. I'm using it from soul language. So the dark night occurs because there is some sort of an imperfection in the personality's relationship to the soul, meaning it is time for us to raise the consciousness of ourself in order for us to be more soul infused than ego-centric. So sometimes the personality unwittingly causes this effect, and sometimes it's the soul that instigates it. It's all this divine timing that we speak about. And so what happens is our path becomes dark. It's temporarily darkened. And in that darkened space, it can feel very obscure for us. It's like, I'm lost. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know what my next step needs to be. But its purpose is to transform the lower nature of your personality that the ego controls, so that it can yield to the higher nature of the self, to the higher nature of the soul. So ultimately, when we look at this, this is like our personality is yearning. It is yearning to unite itself with the soul nature, so that we can express ourselves from the higher self and not from the lower egocentric aspect of ourself. So What is the lower nature of the it's the lower nature of the mind, and what is that? That's our victim energy, that's our spiritual depression, that's us taking things personally, that's righteous arrogance, it's the self-centeredness, it's the evil. But what I think what's really important is not to look at this as being, oh, we're being bad, or this is good because I'm, on this, I'm expressing myself from this higher consciousness. Because see, what that does is if we put it in the good or bad thing, then what we've done is we've created a polarity. And that's what we've done. That's what humanity has done. And that is what is happening, is that there has been a polarity that has been created. And so we're really struggling to find ourselves, our way back home. So we are in the midst, collectively, we are in the midst of moving from egocentric to soul-centric. And darkness is sometimes necessary to receive greater light. So humanity is trying to figure that out. It's trying to figure out its way back to the soul-centric life, because we have been lost in the egocentric life. So now I'm gonna move into more of the astrology piece. And so the reason why I wanted to share this is because, like I said, we're talking about Aquarius, and Aquarius energy speaks to this. And I know that many people, you might hear this out there. I hear some astrologers speaking it as they're speaking that we're in the age of Aquarius. But the truth is we're not completely in the age of Aquarius. We are still stuck between two polarities, which is the Piscean age, which is the time of like Christ, and we are in the Aquarian age. So we are right now in the middle of the two. So we are in two different polarities of energy. And so the age of Aquarius actually does not begin. It is said to begin in 2117. And it doesn't mean like we don't want to go in our head and say, oh no, we're not going to get out of this mess until then. No, that's not it. Like every single one of us are here, born at this time frame, this evolutionary time frame right now, because we are all part of the ushering in of this Aquarian energy. And as I talk about it further, it's going to make sense to you. So, two signs. Pisces, there's a great polarization going on, and we know it, we see it, we feel it. So, this masterclass is an invitation for you to experience astrology as one of the several archetypal teachers of our path. So let's jump in. Now, Aquarius, the giver of life. Okay. Aquarius is an air sign, and there's 3 air signs in the zodiac. And the air signs are all about communication. They're the messengers, they're the mind, they're the social themes, they're the networks. And air's purpose, one of air's purpose is about connecting the heart and the mind. And that's one of the struggles that we are experiencing today, is that we are so mind north, our northness is controlling everything, and we're really struggling to live from the heart, and I say that, but I don't mean that every single one of us, I'm sure that many of us here, or all of us here, otherwise we wouldn't be on this type of a call, that we are much more living from a heart-centric place than an egocentric place, and that we, of course, we all have our struggles. And so one might say, well, okay, well, I'm doing it. But the thing is that we are a reflection of humanity, right? Because with humanity, we actually are all one. And so until the majority, a bigger influence, a bigger raise in consciousness, will the whole thing shift. And so the more we shift as individuals, the deeper we go, the more the more weight that is being moved toward this higher frequency of living, moving into a soul-centric rather than the egocentric. Okay. So Aquarius is symbolized by the water bearer. And when I sent out the email, I showed the picture. That's the water bearer, a woman holding the water, pouring the water into the big kind of lake and area of water. And many people think Aquarius is a water sign, but it's not, because these waters are different. These waters are the waters of knowledge, the waters of insights. It's forward thinking. It's everything that is here to benefit humanity forward. That's what Aquarian energy represents. Okay, so I'm going to go into much of it, like its description. And the archetype of Aquarius carries a duality. Now, this duality is not the same polarization that's happening right now in our humanity. This is different. So it represents the individuation process. So the archetype of Aquarius represents individuation. What is individuation? Well, individuation is the process of figuring out who we are and like, okay, it's a process of figuring out who we are distinct from who we were trained to believe that we are. So it is about individualizing from the group. And yet, Aquarian is also group consciousness. Now, as I keep going and explaining this, this will all make more sense to all of you. So the Aquarian energy is about being true to yourself. I'm just going to pause for a moment because I think there's somebody that's unmuted, and I'm going to ask if you can just go ahead and mute yourself. Okay. So Aquarian energy is about being true to yourself. And one of the examples, and this is something that I hear a lot in my work, is that I feel so different from my family. And this is like, for example, like the artist being born into a family of accountants, or an accountant being born into a family of artists. It's like, I'm so different. Why am I so different? And a lot of times, I think I hear, many people think that there's something wrong with them, or why did I get born into this family? But that's really, it's not to be a victim of that at all, but it's all part of the individuation process. Because as I said earlier, not everybody in this incarnation is going to wake up to consciousness. Some people are still going to remain unconscious, and that's not a right or wrong thing. It's just where everybody is on their journey, and each incarnation is an incarnation that what I have believed and what I have come to understand is part of the evolution of consciousness, period. So I think it's really important for us not to point fingers of someone who is not awake or who is not understanding, because in this lifetime, maybe that is not their karma to do that this lifetime. So again, there is a duality to Aquarian energy. There's the individualized energy of Aquarius, but there's also the group. Okay. Now, the archetype of Aquarius also represents the visionary of the future. Aquarian energy is very much the visionary. It's about innovation. It's about technology. It wants to move. It wants to move the group forward, and in this case, humanity forward. And it's also the rebel. It's the humanitarian. It's technology, it's science, it's intelligence and information. Remember, it's an air sign, so it's head, it's the mind. And it also carries a very deep responsibility, a very deep social responsibility as well. So if you think about this archetype, these are humanitarians. This is that energy of like people who that urge to stand up for a cause, to advocate for something. And I think that we all have that. For some of us, it's expressed in a very transpersonal way, meaning that we will join groups to stand for causes. And for other people, it's going to be more individualized. It may not be that transpersonal of expression. And none of that's right or wrong. It's just how we feel aligned. So this archetype is associated with nonconformity. It's about embracing your individuality and challenging the norms and the structures. It encourages you to think outside the box, to embrace your uniqueness, and to work toward creating a more equitable and progressive society. Now, you can see now how this Aquarius or this Pluto in Aquarius shift that's happening, that is what it is bringing forth. Okay, it is bringing forth this, and this rebellious energy is about pushing against the old structures that are keeping the evolution of heart consciousness and unity consciousness from occurring. Now, Aquarius is also about collaboration, networking. It is it 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 really urges us to unite and to strive toward common goals that benefit humanity. It has a very fierce connection to the independence, to autonomy, to sovereignty, and to thinking radically for oneself. And if you think back maybe on some of your journeys that when you look at the story of your life and your path, it's like for some of you, I know for myself, it started with a rebellion. And it's actually a very natural thing for us to rebel. It could, because at some point, I mean, this is something that I remember hearing a psychologist say. It's like it is necessary for children to rebel at some point, and whether you do it as a child, then it's going to be put off until adulthood. But because that rebellion is actually pulling away from the status quo, pulling away from the tribe, moving into the individual mind and out of the mass unconsciousness of the mind, which is the lower nature of the mind. So rebellion is actually, of course, rebellion can be done in a way that is very self-deprecating, but at the same time, that's when it's done in a shadow way. And I don't mean that in a judgment to say, oh, they did it in a shadow way. It's like, it's everybody's journey is separate, and it plays out how it plays out for each of us. So the archetype of Aquarius is a sign that helps you condition your consciousness to see the oneness of humanity. And here's the little tricky part, is that because of society's complexity, the only way that we can do this is through diversity. This is where the dualism of Aquarius comes in, because it's the group and yet it's the individual. It's cooperation and it's individuality. It's inclusivity and it's diversity. And if you reflect on what's happening for us right now, you see the cry of humanity, of recognizing the diversity of whether it's our color, our sexual orientation, all of that. And so what we're struggling to do and to recognize is that it is so important that we are inclusive, that we come from an inclusive place with all of this diversity, because that's what unity is. That's what unites us. Okay, so it's very paradoxical and it can be very confusing for people. But the truth is, it's actually not. It makes so much complete sense. So this is a very progressive energy. And for those of you who either heard or were on the call when I was talking about Capricorn, and I talked about climbing that spiritual mountain, and that when we get to the top of that mountain, that we make what's called that pivot on the pedestal, where we have reached this point of our own, self development and awakening. And then we turn, because we hear the cries of humanity. We hear the cry and the cries of humanity. And then we make the journey down the mountain. And the journey down the mountain is exactly this Aquarian energy. It's like, how can I come and serve? How can I serve humanity? Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to stop in a moment here, but I want to get all this out so I can give you a really complete understanding of what this Aquarian energy is. Okay, it's also the advocate, right? So this would be like Greenpeace, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. This is all very characteristics of Aquarian energy. And, when so my mother passed away from cancer, and I remember people had started asking me at the time. I was still in doing my work as a cosmetologist, and they were asking me about wanting to join certain groups about breast cancer awareness, or just cancer awareness in women, ovarian cancer, that sort of thing. And I personally have never felt called to it. Even to this day, I don't feel called to that group kind of support in that way. And it's because the nature of me, I am not so much a group oriented person in terms of like the mass. I am more about a more of a interpersonal way in which I work and serve. Like I love working with people one on one. And sure, we're doing a group thing here. That's very different than like a mass group. And so I felt like, well, my contribution I feel more aligned with this type of a contribution of helping people to see and understand how things in life operate based on what I have studied, what I have learned, what I have experienced. So my point to this is that there is no wrong here. There's no wrong and there's no right way to do this for each of us, because this is all part of this Aquarian energy that I'm talking about. We're all going to do it differently. We're all going to connect differently. Okay, so one of the quotes here that I found about Aquarius, and I'm going to share it with you, is I see the new vision. I see the new visions and I want to bring them out into the world. And I'm going to find people to collaborate with. So that speaks very much to the Aquarian journey. I have a vision. I want to bring it out to the world and I'm going to find people to collaborate with. So it's also about hope for the future. I'm going to pause for a moment because I've been talking a lot. And I just want to check in with anybody has anything that they want to ask or share before I continue. Or any insight that came up as you were listening to this, maybe how it relates to you, or maybe how you're seeing it in humanity. Or can you see it? Can you see that this is some of the struggle that we are encountering right now with the different views of what's being said, what narratives are being pushed? Go ahead, Peggy.
Took me forever to find the little hand button. So earlier you said we're as a collective going to soul center for this age at this point in time. So we're going back to soul centeredness. Were we ever soul centered?
Well, so let's look at it from the perspective of who we are as divine beings, of who we are as spiritual beings. I mean that's it right there. Like going back home to that place within ourself. And the other thing I just want to, and this is not my quote here or my analogy, but I'm going to share it because I feel like it's really powerful. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the gentleman Zach Bush, and he talks about the rise of the divine feminine, and this is all part of the rise of divine feminine because it's also heart centered, heart centric. Okay, and it's out of the distorted masculine and into a much more a balanced the balanced nature of masculine and feminine energy. And he describes it as the white dove, and that humanity has been flying with one wing, which has been the masculine wing, but yet over the last 8 years that the feminine wing has unfolded, and we're learning how to fly with both wings. We're learning how to fly with both the masculine and the feminine. And we have not yet arrived in that completion of that place, but that is what we are moving toward, working toward. Let's see. Anybody else have anything they want to add here? Just taking a look, see if I see anybody else's hand up or anything. Nope, we good? Okay.
No, I've got my hand up.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, to me, I can really see that emerging in the world because you hear about the progressives, which are really advocating for different groups of people or different social issues. And so you can see it with that. And that's kind of interesting to hear your perspective on this Aquarian thing and why all of that's happening. And then as far as the divine feminine, divine masculine, I certainly see that much more in the male population now. You see them, there's been the advocating for paternity leave for them as well, and seeing them much more involved with their children, with helping to raise their children, much more than I saw when I was growing up. It was very much that was the man went to work and the woman stayed at home and took care of the house and the kids. So it's really kind of cool to see that progression.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for for that comment. That's exactly right. And then Karen, just thank you for that comment as well. Karen, the other Karen here, is that the unfolding of the masculine and the feminine wings. Yeah, isn't that a beautiful analogy there to imagine that, right? And if you imagine a bird flying with one wing, it's like it's just going to go in a circle, and that's basically what we've been doing. We've been going in a circle, and now it's time for us to fly straight, to fly right, so to speak, and in some, hang on, yeah, and that in some like form of, I don't mean that as in right or wrong, I just mean in right relationship with life. So yeah, this is a very powerful time right now. And the fact that Pluto is moving into Aquarius today. I think the time is like 4 something, but it's there. And we are moving into the sign of Aquarius. That brings in um, even more emphasis on what's happening. And like I said, Pluto's going to be here for 20 years, and this 2024, it's going to be moving back and forth. It's the whole retrograde thing, that planets do. So it's not firmly in Aquarius completely until 2025. And so we'll be still hitting some Capricorn energy here, which is part of the structures, the dismantling of structures. But I don't know if any of you have noticed, I've just having some conversations with my people over the last couple of weeks, but there's been a lot of very like, I don't want to exaggerate, but yeah, some kind of earthquaking kind of things happening in our lives, either whether it's news that people have found out or situations that have been difficult. And that's not a bad, wrong thing. It's just that this movement, when Pluto comes, it's Plutonian energy, and it's literally here to dredge things up and blow things up, and to bring change with unapologetically. It's not like, oh, we're just going to move this. It's like, no, this is going to go down. Pluto is the god of war, and I'm not saying that to be all big and scary or anything, but it's like transform. Like when I was studying astrology, one of my teachers, and there was a number of teachers that would teach Pluto as, when you're having a Pluto transit, it's like transform or die, surrender or die is what it was, like tongue in cheek that we would say that, but it was a hard transit. And so, on what side of that do we want to be on? Because we're all going to feel the effects individually. And so we've been resisting something. That's when we feel something hard, right? But when we have been working with it, even though maybe we're challenged and struggled by it, then the hit isn't as hard, right? Because it's all supporting. But if we're in a situation that we know we should get out of, and we get hit by Pluto in our chart in some way, it's going to go like, yep, you're out of there. You're getting fired now. You're this, you're that. It just kind of, it's this sudden thing. But like I said, when we've been working with it, the hit is not so devastating. And really, a lot of times, like, when something like that happens, we know it's all about the change that needs to occur. And that's why I wanted to talk earlier and bring up that dark night experience, because what that is, it is like, the soul is wanting to infuse itself. It is wanting to speak through the personality, because that's the vehicle that it expresses itself through. And so when we're stuck in this lower nature of our mind and our ego, like, it's part of evolution. It's part of how, things unfold. So it's going to happen. So either we go kicking and screaming, or we go, I give. Okay, show me, I'll do it. you know? So Aquarius is also the liberator. It wants to liberate us. It wants to set us free. We want to be free. That's what this energy is. It's about freedom. It's about independent identity. And yet it's all part of the collective as well. So, there's people here that we see, like maybe out in the world, that are, paradigm shifters. I mean, we're all paradigm shifters, but there's some that we see that have influenced our society. And if you look at, like, Aquarian energy is also rules the sciences and technology. And you know, you look at, and this is, I'm not putting anybody in any kind of like I like or dislike kind of thing, but I'm just going to throw these names out. You look at like Elon Musk. You look at people that have, you know, changed innovation, and whether it's right or wrong is not the issue here. It's like this is all part of these paradigm shifters. And unfortunately, I got to always bring this man's name up, but you look at Trump, man, he's a change agent. I've seen his chart. I've done his astrology chart. We may not like how it shows up, but you know, it's bringing about this upheaval of this Aquarian energy that I'm talking about. And each one of you, you know, we're all change agents in our own way. Let's see what else. Okay, so I put some questions in the chat, and so I would love to hear a little bit from any of you who want to maybe speak to any of those prompts and of the questions. So, like, you know, what groups do you feel more at home with, you know, and why? Like, why does that stand out for you? Like, what is it for you that serves you in whatever way that calls you to a group? And another thing is, do you lose your sense of identity with the group? Because that's what the group can also do, the shadow of the group. We lose our sense of self. And we all see that even in our own, in like relationship. It's like we will sometimes lose our sense of our own autonomy. And this Aquarian energy is here to help us to continue to hold that, you know, to hold our sense of identity. So does anybody like to share anything? I'd love to hear, you know, what's coming up, or your experience. Yeah, go ahead and unmute. Is that Paul? Yes, thank you.
Okay, hope you can hear me.
Yep.
What came up, it was, well, before the idea of joining the group, kind of in between, was the use of archetypes and metaphors that the different archetypes you would talk about. And it kind of dark night of the soul. I mean, that's a huge one. But we can also be in like a wilderness period, which isn't quite the dark night, but just kind of being stuck there. And I remember the story of the Israelites were in, 40 years in the wilderness, lost in the wilderness. I said, how can that cannot be so. If you go in any direction for 5 miles, you're out of the wilderness. Boy, it was a metaphor. It was a symbol for being in ego mind or being in darkness. To me, it makes more sense to think of it that way. So I'm glad you brought up the idea of archetypes, because that helps me think or let go of thinking and go into another space. The other idea that came up was that we're unlearning what we were taught we were. And that reminds me of that movie the Ram Dass had done called Becoming Nobody. And all the unlearning we have to do, all the stuff that we had become because we were told we are this and we are that, and what expectations are put upon us as even as males and females, what is expected of us, and how do we unravel all of that? How do we get back? And I know it was a deeper movie than just saying that, unraveling that part, because it's like unraveling everything of what we think we are and getting to our essence. So I thank you for your this Aquarius, and I'm gonna be complete with that and listen as well as I can. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Paul, for sharing that. The movie that Paul mentioned by Ram Dass is called Becoming Nobody. He actually turned me on to that a couple years ago. I was able to see it on Gaia Network, and I've seen it countless times now. And so thank you for bringing that up. So if any of you want to jot that down and check it out, it's great. Ram Dass, Becoming Nobody, and they're little vignettes of his teachings, and he's an amazing teacher. So thank you. Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned the eagle mind. I'm just briefly going to say, I just recently had a conversation with with my mentor, and he was sharing with me that, that we are moving from the eagle to the condor. The eagle is the mind, the condor is the heart. And I thought that was a pretty cool symbology there, the eagle mind to the condor heart. And he challenged me to find a condor feather. And I'm like, okay, that's a big challenge. I don't know about that. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a condor feather. They're amazing. Yeah, thank you, Paul. Anybody else want to share something insight or what's coming up for them?
Hi there, this is Cynthia. Can you hear
Hey,
me fine?
Cindy. Yeah.
Oh, great. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand. I couldn't figure it out. So, which is crazy because I've done it 1,000 times, but whatever the case may be, I was really intrigued by these questions because they kind of brought up a lot for me on a personal level. And I wondered if anybody else kind of felt the same. And that is, just starting with the first question, what groups do you feel most at home with in my life? And sometimes I feel like, gosh, I just haven't found my group yet. 100%. There's certain times where I'm, affiliated with groups or in different groups, and I'm, very happy within them. But somehow I still feel this kind of inner searching for my group, the one that just resonates with me and that I feel 100% authentic. And I just wondered if there was anybody else that kind of felt the same way sometimes.
Mm, mm. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, can anybody speak to that, Brenda?
Yeah, I guess my group started with my church, but I no longer go to the church, but the people that I've met in the church, I really feel are my group. And a lot of them now are in your group. And then I think about the group that we do on a regular basis. I feel like because we're all on the same path and we want the same things, and we're interested in the astrology, and we're interested in the archetypes, and we love the way you teach it, and the opportunities that we all have to express and talk. I don't feel like anybody's shining over the other. I feel like we really are all equals, and we listen to each other and we support each other. So I feel really good about that. And I don't feel like I got lost in it or anything like that. And then when you ask the question about our work, if it's, let's see, let me get back to it. If it's, let's see, what did you wrote? Does my work in the world build barriers or break them down? And no, I don't feel that at all. And then, is it my ego or my soul that invested? I definitely feel it's both. It's definitely my soul that first attracts the people, my clients. But if I didn't have my ego in it, also, I would not do my work well. So I feel that it's both.
Mm, mm,
So I mean, I liked all your questions.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Monica.
Yeah, I wanted to uh I relate to what Cynthia was saying. I think those questions kind of brought up some reactions, I guess is the best way to put it in me, because being part of a group has been always something that I've struggled with. When I was younger, I mean, for as far as I can remember, I always felt like I was kind of on the outside looking in. And I always felt like I was a little bit different from this group, and also, not similar enough to the other group to be part of any group. And I still feel that way today, but I think I have a different perspective on it. First of all, I feel like I'm still figuring out who I am. And so I can see aspects of myself in different groups, but it's not the whole thing. And I think it's a kind of exciting is the way I look at it, as looking at, there's so many other pieces of the puzzle of who I am that I still don't know. And so I kind of find different pieces in different groups of people. But I no longer attach a meaning, to whether or not I feel like I fit in. But yeah, I've kind of like you too, Teresa. I've never really had an affinity to groups. I've always felt more individual, and then I connect with certain individuals in certain groups, but I never feel like I'm fully part of anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly how I experience that as well. Yeah, Bev, I'm going to just read what Nikki wrote, and then I want to go to you, Bev. So Nikki wrote, "I relate. I feel like for me, I am first going through a purge of old friends / groups, making room for me to call in my aligned friend groups." Yeah, cool. Thank you. Go ahead, Bev.
It wasn't more that I was waving my hand to speak, but I was definitely agreeing. I mean, yeah, I'm not a joiner, but I'm a joiner. You know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but that's all part of the dualistic nature of Aquarius energy that we're talking about here. And we think we have to put it in a box. That's all part of like what we're talking about, like not in the box. Yeah, I am this and I'm not that. I'm all of that. And that's actually part of what Ram Dass, I think, even speaks about, like I am this and I am that. I am. We are all of that.
Yeah.
And Lucy agrees too with what
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It resonates. It all just
Awesome.
It's all right here.
Thank you.
I really do try and move from here down to here. So it's a challenging thing sometimes, but
sometimes it is. Yeah.
It is. And sometimes it's like, why am I not like this all the time? Why don't I just shoot love out of my heart, 24/7?
Well, it's the path. I see your hand up, Karen. I'll go there in just one second. It's the path. It's what I spoke about earlier, right? It's like each incarnation is part of the evolution of our own soul's consciousness and expression, and it's the ultimate goal is that. But then maybe that's when we levitate and we move to a whole other of existence. Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to add, I can really relate to, because of my upbringing, I always felt like I was outside, couldn't quite fit it anywhere. But what I wanted to share was, as I've been working my journey, as I've reintegrated, as I turn inward and get to know myself and nurture myself and come to understand those parts of myself that I left behind and reintegrate those, that feeling of loneliness or not fitting in sort of has dissipated away. The self kind of comes forth, and as I get more confident in that feeling, because in my mind, that thought is a made up feeling. It's a belief I had in myself that as I reintegrate, it sort of dissipates because it's certainly not true. And as the confidence comes, that finding your tribe or your group feels more to me like a whole rather than separated into groups. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense. It does, because what I'm hearing in that as well is part of this duality that we're talking about. And so what came to my mind when I was hearing you, Karen, is, and Monica spoke to it just a moment ago, like from my experiences, like I always felt like I didn't fit in, but then I would find a group, but then I would see that at some point who I was becoming was no longer that group. I could no longer relate in that. It was limiting me. The group began to limit me. And so then I go to another group. And then, ultimately here I am in my life, been on the planet for over 60 years and going, it's okay. Like what you just said, I'm okay, because there are times when this group is like, yeah, I'm here, but it's not like the end all be all, because I feel like when we get to that, then that's where we get stuck. And because we get stuck in this belief system within the group. So it's like ever evolving, right? It's a continuum. That's my experience of how I feel this whole group experience happens through life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I've made it okay. It's okay not to feel like I don't belong, because I actually do belong. Because that was the feeling before, is that I didn't belong. Always looking for that place to belong. It's like, wait a minute, that's a construct there. That's
Right.
not true.
And I think that feeling for me of not belonging was just not being home in myself.
Exactly.
It was myself I was longing for.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah, Lucy, thank you, Karen.
I'm sort of a hermit artist, but I really have been wanting to have more and more contact with friends and that I can really relate to. And what I've noticed is, and I also have always wanted to hold on to everybody who's ever been in my life, and go with them for the whole 9 yards. And so many of them have fallen by the wayside. And now I'm seeing maybe I don't want to stay connected to certain people because it's not good for me. So it's really, I'm just really sort of struck by all of this. Why have all these people fallen by the wayside? And maybe I'm going somewhere they're not, or and then wanting different kinds of people in my life now. And not necessarily groups, but it's nice to be in a community. I mean, I really do sort of yearn for some sort of community. And I was just at a meeting of my community garden, which is like a block and a half away, which felt really good just to be part of that. But I don't think there's any one group. Anyway, this is really good food for thought. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Lucy. I'm going to read a couple of the comments. So Nikki says, that relates to. I just walked away from a group in December that I was a part of for 4 years because it no longer felt like it fit. When years prior, it was so aligned. And I get that. Yeah. Monica said to everyone, love that, Karen. And Cynthia said, love it. And then Nikki again said, as we evolve, I think our world does too. And that includes the people who surrounds us. I agree. And then Heidi just asked, where's the questions? Here are the questions. I'll put them in again. There we go. Just put them in there again. Yeah, go ahead, Heidi. Oops, go ahead and unmute. There we go.
I as well don't have a group, but I have a group. And although we don't get together as a group, everyone is part of my group. I don't know how to explain it. I am as you. I feel that teaching and listening and learning are the gifts that we all have. And in my group, I have one person who doesn't believe any of this. Zero, none. And that is a big challenge for me because I want her to be part of the group. So I find myself not speaking honestly and openly sometimes with that person because they don't go there with me. So anybody have that in their group? Is there some way I can maneuver or just keep learning from this person or teaching this person? Any wise words out there? Yes.
I have something to share. I have people that I surround myself with from time to time who these conversations would never come up. And I don't, it's like, I know that it's really common to say, I like to be around like-minded people. And sure, I do like to be around like-minded people. Like here I am here and I love it. This is like, well, it feeds me. But there's people that serve other purposes in my life for fun or entertainment or whatever that may be. And so what I have learned through these differences, and they have some big differences than who I am as a person. But I have learned more acceptance, that I go beyond looking beyond that. And I'm telling you, these are some challenging for me political things for me, and beliefs of how, morally I think about gun laws and all this kind of stuff. But it's like I know that these people on some level are in my life so that I can go beyond that and see the spirit of that individual and connect with the spirit of that individual. And yeah, we may not be hanging out all the time, and the relationship is only in a certain parameter, but I'm still getting something from it in another way, and that's okay. And I think that I'm going to say, for me personally, when the president that we had, I mentioned his name earlier, came into office, I knew that that was my journey of learning more acceptance in my life. And so, yeah, I don't know if that helps, Heidi, but that's just what came up.
Yeah. It all helps, right? It all helps. And this particular person helps as well. But I think that we all like to be recognized and have that feeding of our own soul. And when I am with that particular person and my soul doesn't feel fed, and I sometimes want to go, God, you're missing so much. But I can't say that either. So thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Brenda.
Yeah, I have one person right next door. She would not fit in here at all, or any spiritual things, but I tell you, she's a good person. I love her dearly. And she's one of my best friends, but we share other things like our dogs and other things. And she's editor of a paper, of a magazine. She's different, but I just love her dearly. I could talk to her about anything. I could tell her my most personal things, and I know it will go no further. I love her dearly, but she's just not spiritual in the way we are. So,
yeah, thank you. Leslie.
I just wanted to thank everybody because you've all spoken for me. I can relate to every one of you of what you've said. I don't have one group either, but I love this group, and I love the Wednesday groups I do with Teresa and my one-on-one. I just love it. But I have got friends, same thing, and my family. I've expressed some of the feelings to my family and the teachings, and they look at me like I'm nuts. So I've just stopped, because I couldn't have been brought up more opposite than all this stuff. And excuse me, I've really got a dry throat here today. But I want to thank everybody because I feel exactly the same way. And in our groups, Teresa taught me a word, someone in the group did, allow. And I've learned to allow. And when I've got friends, just like Brenda just said, totally opposite, and they would think I'm crazy, and they're not one bit spiritual, but I love them and I have a great time with them. And I just allow it. I just allow their beliefs, and they're not my beliefs. But this has been enlightening today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. What just came up when you said that, Leslie, is that, here we are in this time of where there is this polarity that we're experiencing, and especially in our country here. And we're like, it's like, what it's like you think about the intelligence or the consciousness of a child, and a child is only able to understand so much. And so it would be like, for those on the on the other belief systems that are out there, it's not about making them wrong. It's about understanding the limitation and the capacity that's out there. And it's like us trying to get a 5-year-old to understand how to do division. Like, they're not going to know how to do that. They have not been exposed to it to know how to do that. And the same thing is with consciousness. And I think that it's easy to get in the judgmental place of like, oh, why can't they wake up? Why can't they see it? Whatever that is. And it's just not how it operates. It doesn't operate in a linear fashion like that. And the other thing I want to bring up about the rebel in this Aquarian archetype energy is there's a saying of this rebellion energy inside of us, this willing to stand on the fringe. And what that means is willing to stand in our beliefs in front of others. So for example, when I talked about, like, being around people that aren't necessarily would be part of this type of group, the one thing that I've learned not to do anymore is not to hide who I am. And in that way, when we do that, we are actually helping to change those around us, or inviting them in. And it's not about me preaching to them. It's not about any of that, but willing to continue to be and not change who we are in front of other people. Because I don't know for you guys, but I'm going to say for myself, like, this is like, oh, I've got to be in the closet about this because otherwise people are going to think or whatever. But this Aquarian energy is that it's willing to stand on the fringe. And so it is standing in conviction of who you are and not apologizing for who you are, what you believe, what you do. Yes, I bring my medicine bag wherever I go. Yes, I have a medicine rattle in my purse. Yes, I pull it out at the hospital. My grandson was just born. Stuff like that. By willing to do that. Yeah, that's what it takes, is for us being willing to say, yeah, this is who I am. This is how I do it. It's how I roll. That's part of the diversity and the inclusivity that I'm talking about here with Aquarius.
And I love that too, Teresa, because that gives everybody else permission to be themselves.
Yes.
That was an interesting one for me to learn. Is it gave me permission. And that was something that held me back at a long period of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So next month, the date, let's see, we're in February. Okay, so I had a techie issue prior to coming on here, and so I don't have the date of the next one right in front of me, but I think it's like the third week in February. I'm going to be doing Pisces. And Pisces are the two fish swimming in opposite direction. And each of those fish, one of them is symbolized of the ego, the other one is the soul. So we're going to get a little bit more into this, what we've been talking about today, but in a different way. We'll be dealing with a water sign. This was an air. We've already covered earth and a fire sign. So it'll be fun to talk about Pisces on this next one. So the next thing I'm going to say leads into that, because what we're talking about here also in Aquarius is now we begin to talk about the dual nature of the self, which is the soul infused aspect, our egocentric, and then our soul-centric self. And this is something, the fusing of these two within ourselves is something that happens, I said earlier, over many incarnations. Okay. And so, like I said in the beginning, like, we want to give ourselves grace. We want to, have forgiveness for ourselves, because we are still, all of us here are still struggling with that lower nature of the mind and the ego in some way. And I just want to say, and this came to me today when I was, or the last couple of days when I was putting all this information together, is like, I made a decision. I'm not going to be so hard on myself about how, when I screw up sometimes, I know I'm not here to master it all in this lifetime. I know that. And it came super clear to me in putting this information together. And it doesn't mean that I give myself a pass. It just means I'm just not so hard on myself as I've been. Like, just lighten up, lighten up. So I just want to share that with you. Let's see. So somebody want to say something? I wasn't sure. Okay, no, that wasn't nothing. Okay. And so in closing, I want to say, it is our nature. It is our nature. It is the nature of our ego personality to be resistant to the soul's higher promptings. It is more natural for us to be in resistance than for us to surrender. Okay. So we're working on the surrender part. And it's not easy to let go of control. It's not. We're working on it. I'm working on it. I'm sure you all are too. but it shows up in different ways for us. It shows up in our addictions. It shows up, like, believe it or not, these little things like going out for a walk when we know we should, that's all part of how we resist our higher nature, because we know it's something that is good for us. We know it's something that's going to help our spirit. We know it's something that's going to help our health. But these are the ways, it isn't always the working through some of the trauma. I mean, because we work through our trauma, and we hit a point where, what are some of these mundane ways in which we are being in resistance? Let's see, what else? So our path requires for us to be as conscious as possible, and for us to also be conscious of our own duality, and even to accept that and to allow that to be, because that's the nature of, the human experience. So I want to thank all of you for coming on today. This was awesome. It was a great conversation. And I look forward to next month. We'll dive into the energy of Pisces. Let's see, I do have a couple things in the chat here that somebody, yes, Lucy says, I think we need to learn to live with differences. I agree. That's part of the Aquarian archetype. Let's see, March 16th. I don't know what that was. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome, Lucy. Can I please repeat the offering, Tammy? Yes. So I'll be sending this out in the email, Tammy. It is an offer for a 50-minute deeper dive into the information we've been talking about here in these archetypes. And it's $77, and I'll have the link in there if you want to schedule. And yeah, you're very welcome, everyone. This was great. Thank you for your contributions in talking and sharing, because that, it helps all of us. So I really appreciate that. And I've gotten feedback from people who have listened, who said they really like hearing people's shares, because it just helps them, and they can relate, it's just relatable. So again,
May I have a question?
Yeah, who's that?
I'm sorry, before we go, you've talked about, not you, but the people that are here on the call, talked in regards to being part of this group. And I wondered if that is these free classes, or do you have some kind of an ongoing group that you do with people?
I do. I have an ongoing group, and we meet 3 times a week, and every month on Zoom. And I can send you that information, Cynthia. And if you want to have a private conversation, I'm happy to do that as well, of course.
Thank you. Yeah. That's all I wanted to know. But this was beautiful. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
All right,
Teresa.
everybody. Have a great rest of the day, and see you next month. Okay. Bye-bye.